kveld med musikk og politikk, fest og fellesskap. Det utrolig kult å se at det så mange som her I dag. Dere ser det ikke, men dere ser helt utrolig råe ut. Tusen takk for at dere ville dele denne kvelden med oss I dag. Og jeg skal være helt ærlig med dere, lenge så følte jeg at det ikke var plass til meg I politikken. For det var litt som om det ikke var plass til oss arbeiderklassebarna, tenkte jeg lenge. Men Rødt partiet for folk som får livet sine forandret av politikken. Det arbeidsfolk, uføre og andre som vil være med og skape forandring. Venner, jeg har flyttet utrolig mye. Fra land til land, by til by, bydel til bydel. Og jeg har bodd nesten på hele østkanten I Oslo. Og vi og naboene våre, det vi som har fått livene våre forandret av politikken, egentlig ganske ofte. Og jeg har lært at de herskende klassene, de kan klage over ulike regjeringer, men en regjering forandrer aldri livene deres på den måten våre liv har blitt forandret. Likevel så får skatteflyktninger mer oppmerksomhet enn uføre som mister barnetillegget, arbeidsfolk som ikke får fast jobb, eller familier som må flytte fordi de ikke har råd til husleia. For de over 300 000 personer I Norge som ikke har råd til tannlege, så har det noe å si om vi får gratis tannhelse. Men for Erna Solberg og de som sponser valgkampen hennes har det ingenting å si, for de har råd uansett. For arbeidsgiverne I NHO har det ikke så mye å si personlig om vi har en ordentlig sykelønnsordning. Men for arbeidsfolk handler det om du skal ha et trygg inntekt hvis du blir syk. For Sylvi Listhaug, hun... Det var en kunstig pause, dere visste hva dere skulle gjøre. Hun vil ikke tape noen ting på frislipp av innleie og midlertidighet. Og sammen med fagbevegelsen fikk jo vi regjeringen til å forby bemanningsbyråene på byggeplassene. Hva har skjedd? Jo, flere har fått fast jobb. Det har jo noe å si om du har fast jobb, om de du jobber med også har fast jobb. Men vi skal ikke la Sylvi Listhaug ta fra oss seierne. Vi skal forsvare det, vi skal utvide til hele landet, og flere bransjer, ikke minst helsesektoren. Velferden viktig for alle, men den faktisk helt avgjørende for alle som vil tape på at det blir amerikanske tilstander I Norge. Det derfor vi så opptatt av å forsvare velferden mot kutt og privatisering. Vi må styrke og utvide velferden. Belastningen må ned, antall ansatte må opp. Og jeg en av de som ble oppdratt av en alenemor som jakta på neste vakt, for det aldri ble en 100% stilling. Så retten til heltid, det handler om trygghet, trygghet for hele familier. Og det har noe å si om du har råd til å bo I den byen du jobber I. For Tollefsen, han har vært en av Norges rikeste menn, han uansett hvem som har styrt Norge. Men for han så betyr det ikke så veldig mye. Men for oss handler det om å ha råd til et hjem. Bolig, det en nødvendighet, ikke spekulasjonsobjekt. Vi skal stå sammen for en sosial boligpolitikk. I dag det mange som blir straffet med for lave lønninger, kortere levealder og dårlige velferdsytelser. Vi trenger sikkerhetsnett for alle. Velferdsstatens minsteytelser, de må opp over fattigdomsgrensa, fordi det har noe å si om inntekten de under fattigdomsgrensa eller over fattigdomsgrensa. Folk får livene sine forandret av politikken, og de med å forandre politikken I Rødt. Pensjonsreformen. Dere som litt eldre, det gjelder egentlig ikke dere, for det gjelder mest oss. Det gjør det, for det vi som kommer til å tape på den. Det et pensjonsran for vanlige arbeidsfolk. Derfor vi mot å øke pensjonsalderen, for det har noe å si. for ambulansepersonell, brandkonstabler, barnehagearbeidere, bartendere, murere og andre som slites ut før AFP-alderen, at de faktisk ikke må jobbe lenger og lenger og lenger. Valget nå, kjære venner, handler om å gjøre Rødt så store og sterke at vi kan sette vanlige folks interesser i førersetet og Sylvi Listhaug på sidelinja. Og her i Oslo er det Rødt som er motkrafta til Tor Mikkel, Vara og FRP. Vi skal sørge for at Vara og First House-kundelistene hans ikke kommer i regjering. Vi skal stå sammen for velferden i byen vår, kampen for sykehusene våre og mot skolenedleggelse. Det er ikke bare en kamp de driver med i distriktene, vi må ta det også her i Oslo, og vi skal stå sammen for å styrke velferden vår. Og venner, solidaritet er en av våre viktigste verdier. Solidaritet med alle som sliter seg ut i arbeidslivet, og solidaritet på tvers av landegrenser. Mens vi står her, så pågår det et folkemord. Og mange spør seg, kan Norge gjøre mer? Svaret på det er ja. Norge kan og må gjøre mer. Vi lever i en tid, i en verden som er preget av krig og konflikter. Vårt svar må være solidaritet og felles kamp, og vi skal stå sammen for å trekke oljefondet ut av Israel for fritt Palestina. For gode venner, det er mye som står på spill. Og så er det sånn at vår politikk ikke gjør de aller rikeste så veldig glad. Så de gir pengene sine til de andre, altså Høyre, FRP og Venstre. De har masse penger. Men vi har noe sterkere, nemlig troen på et samfunn der beslutninger ikke tas i lukket styrerom, men der vi tar dem i fellesskap. Troen på et samfunn der vi ikke står med lua i hånda, men der alle har rett til arbeid. Og troen på et samfunn der mennesker og miljø er viktigere enn profitt. Og den troen, gode venner, den kan flytte fjell, og det har vi vist tidligere. Det skal vi gjøre igjen. Så, dere ser egentlig ikke hvor vakre dere er, og hvor kule dere er, og hvor bra dere ser ut, men jeg ser det. Og det er ikke hver dag vi kan gjøre noe som både er gøy, spennende og ganske viktig, sammen med hundrevis og tusenvis andre mennesker. Nemlig å drive valgkamp for Rødt. Vi er veldig heldige, og den muligheten skal vi gripe. Og så, se på denne kvelden her, det kommer masse kult etter hvert, og så tenker vi at vi skal møtes igjen på valgdagen, et annet sted i Oslo. Og da skal vi feire at vi igjen har klart å skrive historie sammen. Men det er bare mulig hvis alle som er her vil være med og bidra til å gjøre det. Så i dag åpnet jeg med å si velkommen til landets mest klassedelte, men fineste by. Og da vil jeg åpne med å si velkommen til landets rødeste og fineste by. Og det klarer vi å gjøre hvis vi sammen farger byen vår og landet vårt rødt. Velkommen skal dere være! Og så sier dere mer, nei, dere gjør ikke det. Det er ikke hver dag man får lov til å stå på scenen på Rockefeller, så jeg vil nesten ikke gå, men det finnes veldig mange kulere folk som skal på scenen. Gjør dere klare for vår favorittfinnmarking, beklager på forhånd. Hun har vært nestleder i Rødt i over 10 år. Hun er en av de viktigste personene som bidrar til at det fellesskapet vi har holder sammen, for hun er en enorm lagspiller, og hun har vært med å bygge det partiet vi er i dag, med alle som er her, sammen med flere, stein på stein. Hun er en av de morsomste, klokeste og råeste partilederne som finnes. Råeste partilederen som er. Ta godt imot Marie Sneve Martinussen!
Dere ser helt fette fantastisk ut, hvis det er lov å si, og det må det jo være.
Jeg innrømmer det lett, jeg gjorde ganske mye lekser. Jeg har til og med også forberedt hva jeg skal si her i kveld, fordi jeg ganske nervøs. Som politiker så snakker man jo på talerstolen i Stortinget, man snakker på landsmøter der folk sitter pent og pyntelig på stolene sine. Men å være på scenen til Rockefeller jo noe ganske stort. Og da vi booket Rockefeller for et par måneder siden, så tenkte vi, vi litt crazy nå? Har det gått helt fullstendig til hodet på oss? Og svaret her jo åpenbart nei, fordi vi har jo faktisk fylt Rockefeller. Og det ikke bare stas for en staskveld, men det gir oss også kraft. Kraft til å få ned forskjellene, til å styrke velferden og til å forsvare og fornye folkestyret, og kraft til å vinne valget i september. Og vi skal jo skape et vendepunkt i kampen mot Forskjells-Norge. Og det ikke bare valgkampen som i gang. Det en større samfunnskamp som pågår. Mange vil kanskje kalle det en klassekamp, fordi det det Hvis vi skal vinne over høyresiden på sikt, så må vi vinne på et dypere og mer grunnleggende nivå. Vi må vinne over tankene og ideene til folk. Det der kampen egentlig står. Og den viktigste ideen ideen om hvem som egentlig skaper verdier i samfunnet vårt. Fordi høyresiden, de har en myte som de har fortalt på inn- og utpust så lenge jeg har levd siden 80-tallet, og den går cirka sånn her, at noen få visjonære mennesker, ofte menn, de har helt spesielle evner som gjør at de kan skape arbeidsplasser og skape verdier, og så deler de det raust med oss andre. Og vi skal egentlig bare være veldig glad for det, bukke og neie og takke for at de får lov til å få litt av det de har skapt. Og ikke minst så bør vi jo da belønne dem med kutt i formueskatten. Men sånn det jo ikke, og det vet alle dere, fordi det derfor dere kom hit i dag. Det jo først og fremst arbeid som skaper verdier. Ja, vi trenger naturressurser, vi trenger kapital og teknologi, men alt det her blir liggende helt uvirksomt hvis ikke det skapende arbeidet med. Og derfor den viktigste beskjeden til Rødt, det at arbeidsfolk de virkelige verdiskaperne i samfunnet. Og det her... Nå føler jeg at det hørtes utrolig nerd ut, faktisk. Fordi det her ikke bare viktig, fordi det sånn, nå skal du få rett på eksamensoppgaven din, Rødts eksamensoppgave om hva som skaper verdier i samfunnet. Det viktig, for det får store konsekvenser for hva vi tenker om makt i samfunnet. For hvis det sånn at det de rike få som skaper verdiene, da bør de jo også ha makt til å bestemme over de verdiene og ressursene. Men hvis det sånn, som Rødt sier, at arbeidsfolk skaper verdier, da det arbeidsfolk som skal ha den makta. Og faktisk så det sagt kloke ting om det her før, ikke av meg, men av en annen mann. Og han sa at hvis du har tjent mange penger over en viss mengde, så det ikke dine penger lenger, det samfunnsskapt, det skapt av samfunnet. Og hvem sa det? Det var Kjell Inge Røkke. Og 1 år etterpå så flyttet han til Sveits og meldte seg ut av det norske samfunnet. Men han mente det et lite sekund i alle fall. Han skrev det jo ned, så vi kan sitere det for all fremtid. Og det jo et lite bilde på en utvikling som skjer over hele verden, at de superrike, de blir så rike at de mister det. Altså rent kognitivt. Og de melder seg ut av samfunnet. Og for 20 år siden så sa en annen rik mann det veldig godt. Warren Buffett, han var verdens rikeste mann akkurat da. Han sa, det pågår en klassekrig, og det min klasse, de superrike, som vinner. Og renere ord for penger skal du egentlig ikke lete lenge etter, og det her ble jo helt tydelig under innsettelsen av Donald Trump tidligere i år. Fordi der sto de. Alle de rikeste mennene i verden som styrer veldig mye av den teknologien som omgir oss og påvirker oss og former samfunnet vårt, de samlet seg rundt verdens mektigste politikere. Og det helt riktig å si at vi nå inne i oligarkiets tidsalder, og at mer av den økonomiske, teknologiske og politiske makta samles hos noen få. Og vi samlet her i kveld for å kjempe mot oligarkiet, og for at mer penger, makt og framtidstro heller skal gis til folk flest som skaper verdiene til
Og så ikke Norge ikke USA, og det er veldig viktig å si. Det store forskjeller, men samtidig så det veldig bekymringsfullt at mange av de samme utviklingstrekkene som man ser i USA, dem ser vi også i Norge. Og vi ikke vaksinert for det i Norge, dessverre. Og folk i Norge har opplevd å få mindre å rutte med, dårligere råd, og mindre man skulle sagt de siste 10 årene. Og vi ikke forskånet for en samfunnsutvikling der formue og inntekt samles hos noen få. Og egentlig så trenger vi bare å ta en tur på matbutikken for å se det med egne øyne. Fordi vi har en dagligvarebransje som et oligopol. Og det ikke et raddisbegrep, men noe jeg faktisk lærte da jeg gjorde lekser. Fordi det et samfunnsøkonomisk presist begrep på et marked der et få enkeltaktører kontrollerer markedet. Et fåtall selskaper, i motsetning til monopol der det en, oligopol, et par, kontrollerer markedet. Og det betyr jo at de får enormt mye makt på bekostning av oss. Og at overskuddene de skaper, de ikke skapt av selskapene, men av arbeidsfolkene. Og det jo ikke bare en eller to, det bonden i Steinkjer, det lastebilsjåføren over Saltfjellet, lagerarbeideren i Sauda, butikkmedarbeideren i Sandnes, alle som trengs for å få maten fra jord til bord, fra samlebåndet i fabrikken til samlebåndet i butikken. De har skapt de verdiene som så havner på hendene til 2 av de rikeste familiene i Norge, som aldri har funnet opp noe genialt engang. De har bare tatt verdens eldste oppfinnelse, butikk. Og så eier de fryktelig mye av det, og kan kontrollere det, og dermed stikke av med verdiskapingen til alle de arbeidsfolkene. Og Rødt, vi har bestandig vært opptatt av, men spesielt de siste årene, vært veldig opptatt av dagligvare. Og vi stilte 40 forslag i Stortinget, nerd som vi åpenbart, om hvordan vi kunne bryte opp dagligvare-oligopolet. Og gjett hvor mange som fikk flertall? 0. Og dette veldig bra politikerbegrep, stå her og skryte av våre nederlag. Men det var ikke fordi det var dårlige forslag. Fordi de fleste forslagene stemte noen andre partier på. Men Arbeiderpartiet, Høyre og FrP, de stemte mot absolutt alle, nesten av prinsipp, selv det som hadde fått flertall i Stortinget før, som vi bare fremmet på nytt, vi tenkte det jo litt morsomt, det stemte de mot. Og det jo egentlig ganske sykt. Og en ting Høyresiden. Altså Høyre, jeg vet ikke om dere har fått med dere, de har en stortingsrepresentant som har fått seg et styreverv på si, og noen privatflyturer med Rema Reitan. Og FrP, de har jo en partileder som, da hun kom inn i rikspolitikken, så var det rett ifra jobben som lobbyist for Rema 1000, der hun ga råd. Og så var jo litt etter valget da. Hun ga råd til Rema 1000. Hvordan kan dere forholde dere til den nye Erna Solberg-regjeringen? Før hun, whoops, var minister i den nye Erna Solberg-regjeringen. Så at høyresiden stemmer ned alle forslag som kan bryte opp makta til dagligvare-oligopolet, det forstår jeg. Men det skuffende at det Arbeiderparti-regjeringen reduserer seg til, det å ville, utrede, vurdere, gjennomgå, undersøke. Så alt som da prokrastinering, det de for, men å faktisk gjøre noe, bryte opp kjedene, det de imot. Og det viser jo, mener jeg tydelig, for hvorfor vi trenger et handlekraftig Rødt som blir så stor og sterk at vi ikke til å komme utenom. Og den styrken som vi får på valgdagen, det et løfte fra meg til alle dere. Den skal vi ikke bare bruke til å posere, den skal vi bruke til å skape faktisk forandring. Og det jo på tide at folk sitter igjen med mer. Og egentlig så det jo verdens eldste kampsak, og hvis Israel skulle bedømt det, sikkert verdens kjedeligste slagord da, for det blitt sagt så fryktelig mange ganger før. Det var jo det som har vært arbeiderbevegelsens kampsak og hovedoppgave gjennom flere 100 år. Og det har gitt store resultater. Både utvidelsen av stemmeretten og oppbyggingen av velferdsstaten har jo vært kamparbeiderbevegelsen har kjempet, som har vært krona med seire. Og heldigvis så det sånn at det ikke bare i historiebøkene vi finner seire, vi finner også seire i Norge her og nå. Og for å ta 3 veldig gode da, for å gi oss litt grann oppover stemning her, så har jo Rødt de siste 4 årene på Stortinget blant annet fått gjennomslag for et forbud mot å leie inn arbeidskraft på byggeplasser på Østlandet. Det betyr at flere arbeidsfolk nå kan gå på jobb hver dag og vite hvor de jobber, hvem som kollegene sine, melde seg inn i fagforeninger, ha trygghet for at inntekter kommer og kunne planlegge ferien sin. Det et gjennomslag. Det et gjennomslag som flytter så mye makt at kapitalaktørene har gått helt i spinn. De har både saksøkt staten, tatt staten til ESA, og nå også saksøkt LO for korrupsjon. Fordi LO gjør jobben sin og jobber for interessene til arbeidsfolk. Så sånn tenker de liksom på høyresiden. Og så har vi jo da, lammet i Palestina-bevegelsen og gode krefter, klart å få gjennom at Norge nå anerkjenner Palestina, som et viktig gjennomslag som skal fylles med mer innhold. Og det nyeste på lista jo at vi denne våren her, så har vi faktisk, jeg vet ikke om folk har fått det med seg, men vi har fått flertall for at det skal legges fram en plan om en universell tannhelsetjeneste. Og det her har dere hørt Rødt mase om veldig lenge, veldig mange ganger. Og det sånn at Rødt alene kan ikke innføre en ordentlig tannhelsereform. Men det som vår første kandidat her i Oslo, Seher Aydar, har klart å gjøre i helsekomiteen på Stortinget, å få med seg Arbeiderpartiet, Senterpartiet, SV på at man skal jobbe fram en sånn reform som reduserer økonomiske og geografiske forskjeller. Og det veldig viktig. Fordi folkens, vi kan ta de neste skrittene. Vi kan bygge styrken til å vinne igjen, og vinne stort når vi først skal vinne. Men da trenger vi faktisk hverandre, og vi trenger et fellesskap som kan stå sammen. Og noen kommentatorer har lagt merke til, egentlig bruker jeg ikke lese så mye kommentatorer, for de skriver så mye ræl, hvis det lov å si. Men de skriver også fornuftige ting, så jeg prøver liksom å følge med. Men det noen kommentatorer som tar litt Rødt for gitt, og tenker at når Rødt for all del ikke vil ha Erna Solberg tilbake i statsministerboligen, med eller uten Sindre Finnes, og ikke vil ha Silje Listhaug tilbake i regjeringskvartalet, da kan man liksom fortsette som før etter valget. Og det jo å misforstå totalt, for man kan ikke fortsette som før dagen etter valget. Det har skjedd ting. Egentlig så trenger dere bare å stoppe opp og se litt rundt dere, fordi dere har skjedd. Det at folk mobiliserer og sier ifra, det det som gir Rødt sin styrke, og som gjør at Rødt har klart å vokse, og nå kan bruke den kraften til å få til faktisk forandring. Vi jo i ferd med å bli en større maktfaktor i norsk politikk, og da trenger vi dere med oss på veien for å skape den folkebevegelsen mot Forskjells-Norge, for folkestyre og for forandring. Og jeg tror jo, ingen egentlig tror at Rødt kommer til å være noen dørmatte. Da tror jeg ikke de har møtt Rødt. For det har ikke vi tenkt å være, og det har vi heller aldri vært. Og det jo ingen statsministerkandidat som kommer til å få noe blankofullmakt fra Rødt, det sier seg jo selv. Vi kommer til å stille krav, og vi kommer til å kreve gjennomslag. Og det handler om å få ned forskjellene, styrke velferden og forsvare og fornye fellesskapet. Det handler om å ta kontroll over kraften og få en rettferdig miljøpolitikk som tar vare på naturen. Veldig viktig del av setningen der. Det handler om et arbeidsliv med faste jobber og et sterkt sikkerhetsnett også når du blir syk og gammel. Og det handler om å stå opp for et fritt Palestina. Det resultater vi skal ha. Og ingen statsminister kan ta Rødt og Rødts velgere for gitt. Demokratiet funker faktisk sånn. Har gjort hele tiden. At det må være flertall bak politikken. Og min oppfordring til Jonas Gahr Støre jo å wake up. Arbeiderpartiet har ikke kunnet regjert alene siden 1961. Så det jo på tide å rekalibrere det kompasset og skjønne at man må kunne samarbeide med andre. Og Rødt sitt standpunkt, min utfordring til Støre, jo å få til en samarbeidsavtale. Og det fordi de siste 4 årene har det egentlig vært jævlig frustrerende. Jeg vet ikke om dere husker det, men på valgdagen i 2021 så fikk vi altså det tydeligste flertallet på venstresiden som man har hatt i det norske storting siden Gud vet katte. Ja, siden lenge siden. Og noen vet katte, det bare å sjekke statistikken. Men uansett, på veldig, veldig lenge. Og det har jo ikke gitt den faktiske forandringen vi trenger. Fordi regjeringen har kjørt slalom i Stortinget. De har gjort opp budsjettene sine med SV, ok? Men så har de gått dagen etterpå, uka etterpå, og gjort opp viktige prinsipielle saker. De har gitt fra seg muligheter for å flytte makt og ressurser. Det være seg i fiskeri, det være seg i landbruk, i barnehagepolitikken, i pensjonspolitikken. Så har man gjort opp med høyresiden. Og det det vi må unngå hvis det blir et nytt flertall, at vi får en sånn slalomkjøring i Stortinget. Hvis vi skal få en tydelig retning, så må vi rett og slett binde en ny regjering til venstre mast, sånn at vi får en stø kurs for å styrke fagbevegelsen, for å styrke velferden, få ned forskjellene og få velferd i hele landet. Og det kommer Rødt til å kreve etter valget. Og så det jo, ingen kan få alt som de vil, heller ikke Rødt, og heller ikke meg. Men vi kommer til å være helt tydelige, og de andre partiene må forberede seg på at Rødt skal ha gjennomslag for våre velgere. Og den styrken vi får i valget, den skal vi bruke til å skape faktisk forandring for arbeidsfolk, for pensjonister, for naturen og lokalsamfunn, for folkestyre, og for et fritt Palestina, fordi det trengs mer enn noensinne. Oppsummerer egentlig bare med konklusjonen som står her bak meg. Det utrolig greit å ha huskelapper som så store at man ikke kan overse dem. Rødt utfordrende som trengs. Jeg klar for å vinne valget sammen med dere. Ha en veldig, veldig fin kveld videre. Tusen takk for at dere kom.
Ok, neste taler tidligere finansminister i Hellas. Jeg vil påstå at han en litt kulere finansminister enn den vi har i Norge. Han sto imot EU-trojkaen i 2015, og har egentlig siden Sofie synes det kult, og har siden egentlig vært en slags superstjerne på venstresiden i Europa. Hans siste bok handler om tech-millionærene, som kontrollerer mer og mer av økonomien, politikken og samfunnet ellers. So please give a warm applause for Professor Yanis Varoufakis.
Working? Nothing is working in the European continent, whether you're in the EU or outside the EU. So let's get cracking. We have a lot to do. Thank you very much for the invitation to the good people, the good comrades of the Red Party. I'm here to support them. I'm here to support all the radical leftists. I'm here to support those of us who still refuse to succumb to the new dark ages which are descending upon us. I love the fact that this is a rock venue, and I love the fact that this is a celebration. But in order to celebrate properly, we have to embed our joy and our solidarity in a sense of reality. We need to acknowledge that these are dark times. Because if we don't, then our joy can never be genuine. We have to squeeze joy out of the dark times, but that means we need to understand the dark times. Comrades, friends, if this were 1938, and it was the morning after Kristallnacht in Berlin, in Munich, each and every one of us, you, me, all of us, we would have only one duty, to defend Jews from the Nazis. That would have been the only priority on the morning after Kristallnacht. In the same way today, we have one duty, to defend the Palestinians from the genocide which is unfolding day in, day out, almost for 2 years. Our generation is going to be judged by whether we put an end to this or whether we actually stand up to the various forms in which this meat grinder is progressing with the assistance of our governments, of our press, of our ruling classes. And you know, when we say that unless Palestine is free, and when we say Palestine, we don't mean only Palestinian Muslims. We mean our Jewish comrades. We mean our Armenian comrades. We mean the Bedouins. we mean, when we say from the river to the sea, we mean political rights and equality for everyone and anyone who happens to be between these two bunches of water, the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. And unless they become free, we cannot become free. You can see that. You can see that in Germany. You can see it in France. You can see it in the United States. In Trump's America, you have masked men abducting citizens from the street and dumping them in dark cells simply because they wrote an article in which they criticized the genocide. A year ago, Jewish comrades of ours, of the M25, our organization in Berlin, I saw this with my own eyes. I couldn't believe that I would ever live to see that. German police officers beating up Jews because they opposed genocide. In the name of fighting anti-Semitism, they were being beaten up. You can't make it up. Israel bombs Tehran in an unprovoked attack against the Charter of the United Nations that Norwegians, quite a few diplomats from your country, did a lot of good work to establish that UN Charter. And what does Norway do? Along with Greece and Germany, all of us, of our ruling classes are equally guilty. They attack Iran. They criticize Iran for having been attacked on the basis that they are about to develop nuclear weapons. They've been about to develop nuclear weapons since I was born, apparently, if you believe any Israeli prime minister. Anyway, look, I was invited here on the pretext of talking about a concept that I have developed some time ago. I wrote a book entitled Techno-Feudalism, in which I'm saying, as a leftist, that, we leftists failed. I mean, I thought as a young person, many years ago, decades ago, I thought that people like us came to this world to overthrow capitalism. And here I am writing a book saying that, you know what? Capital beat us to it. Capital morphed into a new form of capital that lives in the East. I call it cloud capital. And that overthrew capitalism and created something of ours, which I call techno-feudalism. I was asked to talk to you about this, but I can't. And I can't because this is not a book launch. This is a time for solidarity and for fighting. But I will connect it somehow. Have you ever heard of a company called Palantir? Yes. Peter Thiel's Palantir? One of the techno-lords that were at the inauguration of the man in the orange hair? In the orange hair, inserted in the orange hair. Huh? Well, there are two companies that have done very well out of the genocide. One is Palantir. And the other is Lockheed Martin. Have you heard of Lockheed Martin? They make these planes called F-35s. You have them, too. Don't know why you need them, but anyway. Yeah, Russia is coming, I know. Ante portas. Now, an F-35 costs 100 million smackers, greenbacks, dollars, right? 100 million for one little tiny thing that spreads death. Now, I can understand that. It's a piece of hardware. They make a lot of those. And they sell them to all sorts of different countries, from Japan all the way to Norway, to Germany, Canada, and so on. But their capitalization in the New York Stock Exchange, the worth that the capitalist market gives Lockheed, is about 100 billion. Now, Palantir is also a military machine, only it does software, not hardware. Do you know what its capitalization was this morning? 300 billion. It was worth 3 times as much as Lockheed Martin. And nobody knows what they make. I mean, we know that they have artificial intelligence, bots which target Palestinians, maybe you, maybe me. They collect biometric data. But it's very fuzzy, isn't it? Well, this is my concept of cloud capital. Why is Tesla worth so many more times than Mercedes-Benz. I mean, Mercedes-Benz makes a lot more cars than Tesla. Why is Tesla so much more valuable to the marketers? Well, the reason is because Teslas are connected to the cloud, and Mercedes are not connected to the cloud. This connection with the cloud creates a new form of capital. You see, capital has always been, since time immemorial, been a produced means of production, a plow that farmers use to, move the land and produce agricultural commodities, is a produced means of production. A machine we produce in order to produce something else. A steam engine, same thing. An industrial robot, same thing. You produce it in order to produce something else with it, a produced means of production. This doesn't produce anything except the power to manipulate our minds. So it's a produced means of mind manipulation. And anyone who owns it, not this, I own this, but I don't own the cloud capital. Yeah? It's Elon Musk that owns the cloud capital. It's Peter Thiel, it's Google, it's Meta, it's Zuckerberg. They own the cloud capital, and therefore the power to modify our behavior, and from guiding our behavior. So, for instance, what does Amazon's Alexa do? You train it to train you, to know you better, to give you good advice, to win your trust, so that then it can say to you, buy that bicycle. And then Jeff Bezos, who has not produced this bicycle, he's not even the capitalist who is exploiting workers to produce the bicycle, collects 40% of what you paid for the bicycle. That's a form of rent, like feudal rent. I call it cloud rent, therefore I'm talking about techno-feudalism. Now, why am I saying all this? If I'm right that this new form of capital is the reason why so much power has been concentrated in the hands not of the 0.1%, but of the 0.0001%. It is because this cloud capital has the capacity to modify our behavior, and anybody who owns that cloud capital can extract gigantic rents from the rest of us. Now, yesterday, Congress, the Senate in the United States, passed, typical Trump, he called it the Genius Act. Of course he called it the Genius Act. He meant his own act, his own genius. Do you know what this is doing? I just wrote an article today in Unheard, but just very briefly. It privatizes fully the dollar. It hands over the reins of the dominance of the American dollar to big tech. Now, these are monumental changes. I can see most of you are decades younger than me. They will shape the techno-feudal future that you will have to crush, that you will have to counter, that you will have to defeat if you're going to live in a world which is worthwhile living in. But meantime, everything that we see is already being shaped by these forces. Why is there a new Cold War between the United States and China? I'll tell you, it's got nothing to do with Taiwan. It's got nothing to do with the Chinese becoming uppity and building more ships, naval vessels, and so on. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got to do with the fact that cloud capital is concentrated in two places, Silicon Valley and China. Here in Europe, we have none. That's why we are irrelevant. Just accept it. Doesn't matter whether you're in the European Union, because the European Union is even more irrelevant than Norway. We are irrelevant. We don't have any cloud capital. And you can see that. You can see that. The Chinese have Bilibili, they have Tencent, they have WeChat, they have the complete gamut of cloud capital. The Americans have it as well. And this is why they are clashing. Because everyone who doesn't have it is irrelevant, and those who have it are the two emerging powers. And Palestine, in a sense, is a dystopic laboratory for firms like Google, IBM, Microsoft, Palantir. They love it. They get real-time data. They choose targets. The F-35, Palantir chooses target. Lockheed's F-35 bombs it. They monitor how many Palestinians died, how many men, women, children, and so on. And this is all new data that makes Palantir the ideal software company for the new techno-feudal wars that are being in the pipeline. So, what can we do about all this? Well, firstly, we have to make clear to our own minds that we're going to resist. Because as the Palestinians have understood since the Nakba in 1948, existence is resistance. If you do not resist, you don't end up existing. Maybe you survive through subsistence, but not through genuine existence as an agent. So let's agree we will resist. But what does this mean? You have elections coming up. We have elections coming up. I hope not very soon. We're not entirely ready. Mera 25, my party. We need another year and a half. But anyway, that's none of your business. Look, I'll start from the perspective of Norway. From the outside, I'm bringing a bird's eye view to you from Greece, which is exactly the opposite of Norway. We are in a hot place. We are bankrupt. We have a massive trade deficit, current account deficit, unlike your trade surplus. And yet, we are very similar. We are on the periphery of Europe. We are rather provincial. We say, I'm going to Europe when you go to Paris, but you don't think that you are in Europe. You don't need to be in Paris to be in Europe. In Oslo, you are in Europe, right? And you don't have to be in the EU to be in Europe. Europe existed before the EU, and because the EU is not going to last very long, it will exist after the EU. We need to be critical of this thing called Europe, because Europe is a destabilizing force in world affairs in a variety of ways. The EU had last year 240 billion euros, not euros, dollars, $240 billion of a trade surplus, current account surplus with the United States, which is what makes Trump invincible. Because there's nothing von der Leyen can do, that half-crazed warmonger. There's nothing she can do against the tariffs of Donald Trump, because if I am selling stuff to you and you're not selling stuff to me, right? I'm selling stuff to you. If you impose tariffs on me, I'm buggered. Vice versa, if you counter tariffs, reciprocal tariffs don't work because. So we are, as a continent, utterly dependent, and you are dependent too on the United States because you are dependent on selling your stuff, your LNG and so on, to the European Union and the whole of the European continent. Between 1950 and 1971, we were dependent on having the dollar. We had the dollar. We had fixed exchange rates with the dollar. Since 1971, we are dependent on the American trade deficit, sucked into America our net exports, and our capitalists were utterly dependent on that and imposed austerity on our working classes in order to maintain the competitiveness of their exports to the United States. Now Trump has come along and said, kaput, finished. No more of that. And our inane, insanely idiotic leaders are running around like decapitated chickens and children, but chickens is a bit less painful, okay? And they're saying to the great master, please have us back. We want to be your vassals. We'll buy your weapons. We will not buy Norwegian LNG, we'll buy Texan LNG. Whatever you want. Can we please be your slaves? No, I don't want you to be my slaves. I mean, this is the situation we face. So what do we need to do? Well, firstly, we need a peace process. Europe must become again a peace project. It has become a destabilizing war project because of our economic failures, because of austerity for the many, which has been practiced now for 30 years, 20 years, and socialism for the bankers and big business. Money printing for the bankers. That's socialism, right? For the bankers, not for the people. And austerity for the many. Now, that has created the circumstances for war. This is what has brought about military Keynesianism. Everybody now talks about growth through spending on defense, on weaponry. Yeah. Military Keynesianism doesn't work in Europe, and it shouldn't work. It can't work, and it won't work. It works in the United States, but that's why they have a war every year. Yeah. They have to have Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan in order to keep replenishing the stocks. Now, is that what Europe wants? So we need a peace process. We need to send a message to that other criminal, Putin, and say to him, you know what, we need a peace treaty. This is what you do with your enemies. Unless you want to go and take Moscow. But they, Stoltenberg is a bloody hypocrite. He's sending weapons to the Ukrainians to take Crimea. But he's not going himself to fight or sending his kids to fight. If Putin is the new Hitler, which is a great compliment for Hitler, by the way, not that Putin is a nice man, but let's not lose the perspective here, the Holocaust. There wasn't a Holocaust in Putin's Russia, right? But if we think he is Hitler, then why don't we go and take Moscow and push him into a bunker and force him to commit suicide like Hitler? No, because we're hypocrites. We let the Ukrainians do it. We send them guns and say, take Moscow. So we need a peace process. We need to end the stupid tariff war between Europe and China. We need cooperation with people that we don't like very much. But this is, this is peace. This is not appeasement. It is not being genocidal. And this is something that Norwegians can do a great deal to assist the rest of us in fighting for. That's the first thing we need to do. The second thing to do is we need to end austerity. End austerity. Why? Because austerity has never worked in the history of the universe. It is a dangerous idea which is functional to the class war that the powers that be are waging against the workers of the world. This is what austerity is. We need to regain control of our money. Trump had no problem essentially destroying the Central Bank of the United States yesterday with his Genius Act. This is what he did. This is why I said he's privatizing, giving the dollar to his big tech friends. They don't have a problem doing it. Well, we shouldn't have a problem doing that either. We should take back control of our money. Imagine if your central bank were to give a digital wallet to every Norwegian, or the European Central Bank could do it for all Europeans, and allowed you to keep your money there, digital wallet. You can download it from the App Store, right? Paying you the interest rate that the central bank pays the commercial bankers, with complete total safety of your money and free transactions. That would decimate the private bankers. The private bankers would then have to operate like bankers. They would have to actually give you loans. So let's work towards a monetary commons. And if we are true to our word as socialists, let's work towards changing corporate law. This is the vision for the long term, but it is a vision that we must have to change corporate law so that we have one share, one employee, one vote for every company. You know what that would do? If we took control of the monetary system with the monetary commons and we have one employee, one share, one vote, capitalism would end. We would have markets without capitalism. We would have applications and cloud capital without techno-feudalism. That must be a gain on the radar screen of our mind, because otherwise we don't have a vision to fight for. But there are things we can start doing tomorrow, like, for instance, ending all electricity markets. It is stupid to have electricity markets. What's the point of an electricity market? You realize in this building, there is only one wire coming out of the wall. Only one wire. Yes. Only one wire is coming out of the wall. And, we have all these wonderful lights and sounds and so on. That's not a market. That's a monopoly. Now, the fact that the governments are pretending that they are creating a phony market, who is hiding behind that phony market out of that single wire that comes out of your home, your apartment, this wonderful place? A cartel. So let's get rid of the cartel by getting rid of all that. If Norway severs the link, the electricity cable with the rest of Europe, that's not necessarily going to solve your problems. Because if they impose upon you the same rules as in the European Union, you know that they will be charging you every kilowatt hour at the highest possible price, because this is the model that they're using for those pseudo markets of theirs. So there are things we can do today, tomorrow, in 6 months, in the future, to bring about socialism. Because as Rosa Luxemburg told us from herself, it's socialism or barbarism. And now this bloody world has selected barbarism. We have to select socialism. Thank you.
Ok, vi har fått det bekreftet. Han litt kulere enn vår egen finansminister, eller? Vi får jobbe på at etter valget så får vi kanskje noe litt nærmere dette her enn det vi har i dag. Men jeg sa i sted at dere var veldig kule, og det dere, så jeg må bare ta et bilde av dere hvis det greit. Å herregud, dere så mange. Ok, smil da. Bra, tusen takk. Ok, tilbake til oppgaven min. Det var bare av egeninteresse. Snart så skal vi få en samtale her, sånn. Etter neste taler kommer Ellen Engelstad fra Manifest. Hun skal lede en samtale. Hun kommer til å fortelle dere hva som skjer. Men før det så skal vi ha en taler som har drevet med aksjer. Han en tidligere aksjehandler, men nå han politisk aktivist. Han forfatter, og han har millioner av seere på sosiale medier, der han gjør egentlig økonomi mer tilgjengelig for folk. Og for meg så føler jeg at det blir litt sånn som de gutta jeg vokste opp med, har lært seg politikk, og så snakker om det. Og det helt fantastisk, for det så mye mangel på det. Så ta godt imot Gary Stevenson.
I didn't understand any of that introduction, and I don't know how many people here know me, and I've been told we're short on time and there's lots of important things to talk about. So I'm going to try and keep it tight, not too many jokes. I'm somebody who made millions of pounds betting on the collapse of Western economies, and I would like to talk today about how I did that and how we stop it. So I grew up poor in the East End of London. I was very good at maths, and like pretty much everybody who is poor and good at maths in London, I wanted to go work in the skyscrapers and be a banker. So I did what you're supposed to do. I worked really hard. I got good grades. I got into the London School of Economics, and I got a job as an interest rates trader at Citibank in June of 2008, which is obviously just before the Lehman crisis. I don't want to talk about the Lehman crisis. You all know about it. I want to talk about what happened afterwards. After the Lehman crisis, everybody thought that with zero interest rates and quantitative easing, we would have a massive economic recovery in 2009. That didn't happen. In 2009, everybody thought that because of zero interest rates and quantitative easing, we would have a massive recovery in 2010. It didn't happen. In 2010, everybody said the same thing. At the beginning of 2011, everybody was convinced that because of zero interest rates and quantitative easing, we would have a massive economic recovery that year. And it was around about then I started to become a little bit suspicious. So if you spend 3 years at LSE and another 4 years on the trading floor, it will become quite clear to you that most of these genius economists are just posh boys who don't really know what they're doing. So I wanted to understand why the recovery didn't happen. Now, zero interest rates are supposed to get people spending money. So I had the genius idea of asking people, why don't you spend more money? I probably don't need to tell you guys what everybody said when I asked them. They said, we don't spend any money because we don't have any money. And I didn't take them at their word, right? I looked into it. This was 2011. I was 24 years old. At that time, what I could see was my parents' generation, my friends' parents' generation, poor people who owned homes. And my generation, people who would never be able to afford to own homes. These are ordinary families going from being property-owning, wealth-owning families to being families that own no wealth over time. Doesn't make any sense to ask these guys, why don't you spend more money? Because they are losing their wealth. They are dissaving their income. They are going into debt year after year. That was 2011. I got called into a meeting by a Citibank senior economist where he showed us the fiscal situation of Greece, of Spain, of Portugal, of Ireland, of Italy, but also of the UK, the US, Japan. And what we saw was governments spending more than their income every year, losing their assets and going further and further into debt. I left that meeting not particularly worried, to be honest, about the situation of Western welfare states, but I couldn't help but notice the similarity between my friends and their families and Western governments, losing their assets, going into debt, spending more than their income year after year. What struck me about this was that it is impossible. It is not possible for both the public sector and the private sector to simultaneously lose all of their assets. The assets have to go somewhere. Not everybody can go into debt at the same time. The debt has to be to somebody. If one group of society is getting poorer, somebody has to be getting richer. Yeah. And I couldn't understand who it was until I went back to work on the trading floor on a desk full of multimillionaires. That's when I realized what is happening, what was happening then and what is still happening now. Wealth is being sucked out of the middle class. Wealth is being sucked out of Western governments, and it's being accumulated by an international super rich elite. And I realized straight away that would never get better unless we did something about it. Because if an ordinary family can't run a balanced budget when they own their own home, then they definitely can't run one when they don't own their own home. And if governments can't run a balanced budget when they have wealth, then they definitely can't run a balanced budget when they don't have wealth. That would get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. I went back to my desk, I put a bet on that the economy would get worse and worse forever, and by the end of that year, I was Citibank's most profitable trader in the world. By betting on the collapse of Western economies, and they paid me $2 million, and that was a lot to think about. And I can't lie, I did it for one more year before I decided that probably we should do something about the collapse of Western society. But I want to talk about what happened afterwards, right? Because I quit Citibank in 2014, and it's 2025 now, and I haven't stopped it yet, all right? So the first thing I did was I went and I worked at a think tank, a left-wing think tank in London, and there was nobody there working on inequality. Not a single person at a left-wing think tank working on inequality. So I left the think tank and I went back to university. I did a 2-year master's at Oxford, and it was a bunch of rich people wearing bow ties and capes, and they didn't talk at all in 2 years, not a single lecture about inequality. They're not going to fix it in the think tanks. They're not going to fix it in universities. So I decided to start writing for the newspapers. In 2020, I started writing for The Guardian articles about inequality. And they were quite popular, to be honest. But when I spoke to my friends back home who are worried about a looming financial crisis, they weren't reading my articles in The Guardian. They were going online, they were going on YouTube, social media, and they were watching crazy alt-right, far-right stuff from America. You know, these broadsheet newspapers were not reaching the people. And I realized then, if you want to reach the people, you need to be where the people are. And the people nowadays, they're on social media. They're on YouTube, they're on Instagram, they're on TikTok. So I started a YouTube channel. But at the same time that I was starting a YouTube channel, there was a massive, growing, burgeoning, far-right, alt-right, online presence coming out of the US that was being watched all over the world. What we are seeing now, the global right of far-right politics, the global popularity of alt-right politics, it is in a massive part coming from this massive online presence coming from the US. Yeah. And the left in my country, and to be honest, I can't really see it anywhere, was not really interested in making videos. And you're leaving the space open. The space is totally left open. I kept making videos, and it took a long time before we started getting any views, you know. I needed to write a book. The book came out. That's why I'm here. People know me because of the book. In April, we got 50 million views, just on the YouTube. 50 million views in 1 month, right? This is a YouTube channel saying very clearly, the reason you are getting poorer is because of growing wealth inequality. Unless you tax the rich, your kids will be poor, your grandkids will be poor, this will get worse and worse. That is the truth. That is the truth. And listen, right and far-right parties, they are going to win elections, they are winning elections, and they will continue to win elections all over the world. All of these far-right parties are funded by billionaires, and they want to cut taxes on billionaires. They will get into power, they will increase inequality, and we will continue to see living standards fall. But people are sick of the establishment parties, right? I'm convinced, I don't know if any of you saw, there was a meme on the internet of an ice skating race where they're all going round and round and round, and just before the end, one guy falls over, takes everybody else out, and the guy half a lap behind comes and wins. For me, that is the far right. People have lost faith in the mainstream political parties, and they want something new. But in most countries, really, there is nothing out there that is convincingly new except for the alt-right, except for the far-right. And that's why I'm very glad to be here and see so many people here in a hall for something that seems exciting and that seems new, that is not on that side. Because we need to get something on the table that is an alternative to that. And in my country and in a lot of countries, the left is in quite a depressed state. But the truth is, these guys are going to get into power and they will fail on the economy. And when that happens, people will want something new. And we have to be ready. We have to be ready. And that's why I'm here today. And before here, I was going across the world, across countries in Europe. We are seeing the same problems everywhere. Unaffordable housing, rising cost of living, falling living standards. The far right is selling an answer that is not going to work. We need to be ready. We need to be ready. But what I would encourage you guys to do is be ruthless in your focus on living standards. Because where I'm from... Where I'm from, if you talk about taxing the rich, a lot of people still think you're a tree-hugging hippie, right? This is the reason why ordinary people's kids and grandkids and many young people today cannot afford homes, cannot afford to have families. In my country now, a country which was once one of the richest in the world, literally half of the families in the country cannot simultaneously feed their kids and turn the heating on. And I know it's not as bad as that here yet, but it is happening all over the world. It will get worse. But listen, when that happens, if we do not have an alternative which is progressive, it will go back to a boring centrist party that does nothing, and the right will move further to the right. And we will get a centrist and a more extreme right party again and again and again. And to be honest, I do the work that I do knowing that there's only so long people like me will be allowed to do that work. So we need to build an alternative that is progressive, that builds something together, that brings people together, but we need to have an online element. Before here I was in Sweden, before that I was in Portugal, before that I was in Italy. I don't get paid to do any of these, right? I do that because I know this doesn't get fixed just by me and it doesn't get fixed just by the UK. We need people doing this online work all over the world, all over Europe in different languages. So I want to see in a couple of years' time, I want to see people doing it. I want to see people doing this work. I want to see people doing this work in Norway, in Norwegian. But when you do it, and I want to see all different people. I want to see men, women, old people, young people, people from the cities, people from the countryside. We need those voices online because that is what the US alt-right does. As a diversity of voices, and people love to watch it. People love to watch it. So listen, thank you very much for having me here. I would like to encourage you, be ruthless in your focus on living standards and make sure you have a presence online because without that, we can't win. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you both, for, all three actually, for your fantastic interventions here. It's great to have you three now all on the stage together. And you are all economists, actually. So I thought I could start with talking a little bit about the economy. And a comrade and friend of mine from Rødt, Mimi Kristiansson, he have this joke he likes to make, which is that he knows many leftists who start studying economics to go in and try to change it. And then they come out in the end as economists. So I guess my first question to all of you is, why is it that economics has somehow become a privilege of the right, or as the joke goes, you become a right-winger in a sense, even if when you look at economic arguments, they are very clearly arguing for wealth distribution and tackling these problems that you have described. So my question is, why has it become such a privilege of the right, and why has it also become such a well-hidden secret, so much mirror and smoke, so difficult to understand how or who is gaining from that? I can start with you.
Yeah. Actually, because I have a very relevant example from Norway today.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's that in Great Britain and Greece, but in Norway the last couple of years, there was a lot of discussion about the interest rate and currency values and the inflation. So it's a part of the economic debate a lot. But then you always have this, what I don't know the English term, but it's like super economists. They're called chief economists, who always in the media says, "Oh, we need to heighten the interest rate. The interest rate should be high." And they say like experts, but they're not experts. They are the bankers, economists. Yeah. But the media always treat them as experts, as like academic experts. But they are actually paid by and deep in the pocket of the banks. And this is just one example that, especially in Norway, I feel that when talking about the economy, they make it not a political issue, but like an expert issue. And in many countries, I think the educations, they have some political bias in what they teach students. I don't know how you felt when you studied.
Yeah, I think so I've been 5 years at economics universities, and Yanis has been much longer. The first thing I would say for people who haven't been in these universities, they don't really talk about things like the housing crisis and the job crisis. The truth is, these guys, they do a ton of maths. But they're studying models with no inequality. So it's almost like a brainwashing. Like if you spend 10 years memorizing these very complicated models with no inequality, and then somebody comes and says maybe the problem is inequality, you're going to be like, well, it better not be, because I've wasted 10 years. 20 years, you know? And that gets into their heads. But I think the other thing is money. The other thing is money, right? There's two ways to make money in economics, right? You either like manage the money over the rich, or you sell the public to the rich. So like when I go and do a debate on TV, it's always me doing it for free and some guy who works for a think tank that is funded by a billionaire. Like that's it, like there's no money in it. And you know, but I also think within the left, there's not been enough focus on inequality, and I would love to see there be more focus on inequality, and I'm hoping there will be. But yeah, you know, I've got the YouTube that's out there to educate ordinary people because I want ordinary people to be able to make a case in economics. You don't let it be an expert subject, because the truth is, most of the experts are rich, they're winning. So you need to fight your ground and say no. Just very simply, inequality is connected to living standards. Say it again and again, because that's how something which is considered unbelievable becomes accepted fact. Lots of people saying it again and again. Inequality is connected, intrinsically connected to living standards.
And you have actually been trying to make economics more...
Let me speak to this, because I think I'm qualified.
Yeah.
I have a PhD in economics.
Yeah.
I got my first tenured position in 1985. 1985. See how ancient I am. I've taught in universities in 6 countries over the last 40 years. Economics is not a science. There is no such thing as an economics expert. There is an expert when it comes to the bond market. There's an expert when it comes to accounting. There's an expert when it comes to civil engineering. If you want to build a bridge, you can't do it democratically because it will collapse and you will die. But economics is not a science, and if it's not a science, there's no experts. Now, it is a remarkably interesting gross failure, because I don't know whether you gather, I'm sure you gathered that because you're a very smart man, Gary, but in the economics we teach our graduate and our undergraduate students, we teach them very complicated mathematical models of the economy. Now, let me share a secret with you. Those models have certain limitations. There are things that they cannot include. Can I tell you what some of those are? They cannot include space, because if you include space, you introduce local monopolies, and then the model doesn't work. You can't solve the mathematics. So space is out. You can't include time, because if you include time, then you have what we call the indeterminacy problem. Again, you can't solve the mathematics. You can only take snapshots in time. So you can't have video, but you can have stills, right? But you know, tell a physicist that you can't tell a story of how a car starts from here and goes there, and they will say, what? So you can't have space, you can't have time, you can't have money in economics models. Money doesn't exist in economics. When you see these axes, the y-axis and the x-axis, and you have the quantity of tomatoes on the x-axis, and you have the price of tomatoes. That price is not money. It is potatoes. How many potatoes do you have to... It is as if it's barter. And most of you have suffered a little bit of mathematics at school to allow me to say this. It's like having a system of 5 equations in 6 unknowns. You can't solve it. And why do you always have... If you put money, it's the additional unknown, because if you have 5 sectors, each one of them has 5 prices, 5 equations, demand and supply. But then if you add money, you have 6 unknowns, so you can't solve. So we don't put money in there. We pretend to. We talk about money, but we don't have the capacity to put money in our model. So no time, no space, no money, and no debt. Because if you have no time and no money, you can't have debt. Because debt is, by definition, something you have over time. You borrow now to return tomorrow, right? If there is no tomorrow and there is no money, you can have debt. So all the models of your central banks, your finance ministers, and so on, which are being used, if you ask them, now, why are you predicting this, or why are you saying that if we increase the minimum wage, unemployment will go up by that much? They will cite particular mathematical statistical models. All of them are built on models that cannot handle time, space, money, and debt. So they're useless. But this is the beauty of economics. Because by being useless, right, they cannot ever approximate anything resembling capitalism. So they can never be wrong about something that they are never meant to examine. So this is why you have, remember, before 2008, there were all those people who were paraded in front of the cameras on CNN, CBS, your channels, saying that the market now has reached a level of sophistication. There can't be a crash. There can't be a crash. Okay? And people like us who were saying there can be a crash were looked upon as Neanderthals, at best. And then the crash happens. And what do the television stations do? They bring the same experts who were predicted that there cannot be a crash to explain why there was a crash. So it's the most peculiar failure. The more ridiculous your predictions are, if you're an establishment expert representing Wall Street, the ruling class and so on, the more wrong you are, the greater your acceptance. But you see, this is not new. There was an anthropologist, a British anthropologist, a guy called Evans Pritchard, fantastic anthropologist in the 1940s. And he had actually written down a beautiful story about the Azande. The Azande are an African tribe that he had studied. And his big question was this. He said, look, they have these oracles. Those oracles always produce forecasts. And they're almost always wrong. And yet people believe them. Why? Because the people that, the farmer that goes to the oracle says, Oracle, what must I do so that my crop turns out well? And they tell them something, the crop dies. Then they go back to the same oracle to find out why the oracle was wrong. So if you go back to the pseudo-expert to seek advice as to why the pseudo-expert fucked up, then the pseudo-expert is impenetrable. There's nothing you can do. Yeah. So it's class struggle. Yeah. We need to overthrow. Economics is a religion with equations. Okay?
Yeah. And you mentioned the financial crisis you all did back in 2008 and from there on. And at that time, you were a trader and in Citigroup, I believe, and you talked about this. I just thought you could emphasize a bit more how you realized that everyone was wrong and that no one was kind of listening to reason. One who was speaking a bit reason at the time was the Minister of Finance in Greece, Yanis Varoufakis. He was asking for another policy, but you kind of realized that they were not going to listen to him and bet it against the markets. Can you say a bit about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, when I started making that bet was 2011. I think that was the year that Piketty wrote his book. It might have been the year before. Piketty wrote his book, Capital. But I studied economics at LSE 05 to 08. And inequality was just not in the game. If you have studied economics at university, you just do not think about inequality. That is what people in other disciplines think about. Economists just did not. And in 2011, when I started to realize this is what's going to kill it, inequality is what's going to kill it, of course it wasn't going to get fixed because, okay, we have voices like Yanis, but he's one voice in a million, and, just now I'm screaming in the UK and we're growing a voice, but I don't win it by myself. Yanis doesn't, you need a lot more people. And it's, in a way, it's disappointing that we haven't come that far, but we are a lot more on the agenda now. And I think, we just had our local elections in the UK. All of the politicians have to have an answer. Why aren't you taxing the rich? Why are you not doing more on inequality? That's because of my YouTube channel. That's the truth. That's the truth. So, and of course, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. I'm not the first person to say this. In 2011, it was clear nothing would be done because people weren't talking about it. You need to shift the Overton window. You need to move this from being something that is outrageous, only the far left to it, to the obvious truth, because it is the obvious truth. It is the truth. If you do not stop that inequality from growing, living standards will continue to fall. And, the reason I'm here is because we need more people saying it. We needed more people in 2011. It wasn't enough. Yanis did his best, but it wasn't enough. And we need more people now. We need more, because I don't want to be here 14 years down the line and this be worse. So we need more people. We need you, but not just you, your friends, your family. We need more people, making it clear the connection between inequality and the economy.
Could you, Yanis, also say briefly about how the crisis has kind of influenced the world ever since then? And also, do you have any comment to the fact that he betted against you? Are you morally upset?
It was not personal, yeah.
So what's the question again?
How we are still lingering on from the financial crisis, how it has kind of, the fact that the way that it was handled so poorly is still kind of marking.
The financial crisis was a fantastic opportunity to recalibrate everything, to have a serious political revolution, a democratic revolution, to bring exploitation, not just inequality. Exploitation is the process by which inequality is created. Inequality is a horrible symptom, but exploitation is the manner in which it is brought about. We had an opportunity, but we weren't ready. And when I say we, I mean the left. We were decimated. We were decimated to a large extent because of our own failures, because we of the left, and I'm going to say this as a committed Marxist leftist, we have been appalling at the way we have treated each other. You know, remember, the Gulag was created by communists for communists, not for the capitalists. Okay? Patriarchal norms, sexism, authoritarianism. We never managed to really eradicate that from the left. And, you know, in 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed, a lot of us who were of the communist tradition were found morally wanting. The Social Democrats sold out completely. They essentially defected to the capitalist side of politics. And so when in 2008, you know, the world, nature, the universe presented us with a fantastic opportunity, we had all the evidence. I mean, as you said, Gary, right? All the evidence that this system generates massive crashes in the same way, from the same production line that it produces iPhones. Okay, it's not a crisis for capitalism, are second nature. They are designed, they are baked into its DNA. Inequality is baked into its DNA, but we weren't ready. And when some of us managed to get into government, in 2015, I was elected, we were elected, some of us fought the fight, but unfortunately, our own leadership overthrew the people. We were a party, we were talking about this earlier, just to compare with your party. We were a party in 2009 of 4%. In 2012, because of the crisis, we grew to 17%. In 2015, we won government by 36%. We fought for 5 months against the financiers, and we got 62% on the 5th of July. And you know what happened that night? When we had gone from 4% to 62%. My leader betrayed the people and overthrew the people. Usually it's the people who overthrow the leader. This time it was the leader who overthrew the people. And the result is the left died. Go to Greece now, there's no left. We're struggling. Mera 25, our party, we're now back to 4%. Today, 4.2. And we'll start again. And this time we hope not to betray the people. Does this answer your question? It's not a...
Yeah, it's a very good answer. And I think many here remember that time. And maybe you also, Maria, remember it and feel that there's still waves.
Yes, actually, I started studying economics in 2008, and that was very interesting because when everything was going on with the financial crisis, we still had lectures in the university as if nothing happened. And I remember especially the theories on debt, on government debt, that we were taught at the same time as the debt crisis rolling, and the theories didn't match the newspapers. It's like it was a collision, but you know the textbook is the textbooks, and we still at the exams had to like answer to the theories that were proven wrong by the austerity policies, for example, which is very important. But I was thinking about trying to argue that we are in a better place now than in 2011, and I think that. For Norway as a country and the political discussion in Norway, what I was saying earlier in my Norwegian speech, the thing that we have to win over the ideas of the people, that the right has neoliberal ideas, has kind of brainwashed the whole generation, my generation, and I guess both older and younger also, into this thought of who creates the value in society. And we have to win that idea, because if we don't win the idea that work is the creation of value, exploitation, as you said it, in like the capitalist society is based on exploitation, and kind of Marxist first course of value theory, kind of. We're not going to say that on our leaflets, I promise you.
Why not?
But that is actually our leaflet. It is a short summary in a more accessible language about how wealth is created. And if we don't win that idea, I don't know if we're going to win it now, next 6 months, but we have to win that idea. Because if not, then there is no moral argument or there is no logical argument that living standards for people should increase. Because if it is these rich people, these traders, who actually creates everything, then they probably deserve it. So that's a thing that I feel that kind of our movement now is at a good place to do that. But also I would highly recommend Gary's YouTube channel. It's a very, very much better version of my Tidfortal. But it is basically the same Tidfortal. It's my YouTube thing. But it's basically the same thing, because it's so important that people, ordinary people, bus drivers, people in kindergarten, at hospitals, understand these things enough to get the confidence to believe in it and to be able to argue it in the workplace. Because that's how we change ideas.
If I may add just one line. You must all become experts in political economy. That's what democracy means. Each one of you.
Yeah, and we can continue on that note, because I saw about this neoliberal brainwash that Marie talked about. It is quite evident in society now, and one sign I see of it is that you talk about taxing the rich, and we actually have a bit of a debate around that now in Norway in the election period. But it's a debate that the right wing is actually quite comfortable in having, because they like to raise it because they feel that the left is chasing the entrepreneurs, the brilliant investors out of the country. And we have had a round of investors moving to Switzerland to get away from taxes. And now we're chasing even more of them out. And so the right wing is quite comfortable talking about this. And so my question is twofold to all of you, but I can start with you. First of all, why is it important to tax the rich? And second, how can we argue against this narrative that if we do it, they are just going to take all the money, go away, there's not going to be any taxes, and there's also not going to be any country anymore. The lights are going to be turned off and everything is going to go dark. And
I think it's really important to understand the difference between a person who has a good job and has a high income, and a person or a family who has an enormous accumulated wealth of like 100 million euros. Because the problem is, of course, most ordinary people don't know anybody who is worth 100 million euros. And when you say tax the rich, they think, oh, my friend who is a doctor, or my friend who is a lawyer, my friend who is a banker. That's what they think. So when I say tax the rich, people immediately think you want to tax high-earning individuals. And if we tax, lawyers or doctors or, like, heaven forbid, YouTubers, they can go to Dubai and they can do their work. But if we try to tax someone who owns $100 million of Norwegian assets, they can go to Dubai. It's Norwegian assets. When the UK government, decided suddenly it doesn't want Roman Abramovich to own Chelsea Football Club, it turns out it's not that easy to put Chelsea Football Club in a bag and take it to Russia. Listen, China does not allow you to own $1 billion of Chinese assets. And when they come and say, where's the tax on those assets? You say, oh, actually, I live in Dubai, so I don't need. It's absurd. This system of you can own. These guys own your country. They own your natural resources of your country. They own your houses. They own your mortgages. They own your government debt. And then when we try to tax them, they say, oh, sorry, I live in Dubai. It's a joke. This system is a joke. Like, these guys, their money comes from you. You pay it. You pay your mortgage. You pay your rent. Your government pays its interest. It comes from you. These people are taxable. They are taxable. because their money comes from you. And I think it's very, very important to know the difference between doctors and lawyers and these families who own hundreds of millions of pounds, billions of pounds. What are they going to do with that passive income? 1 billion euros gives you 5 million euros a month passive income. There is nothing they can do except for buy the assets from the middle class. And if you do not tax them, you will bankrupt your middle class. And Norway has done a good job of protecting its wealth compared to other countries. Look at what's happening in my country. Look at what's happened in Greece. Look at the collapse of government wealth and middle class wealth. That will happen here if you do not stop the rich, the billionaires from eating everything. You have to stop them to protect your middle class wealth.
Do you have a comment to the question too?
Every word Gary said, no need to repeat it. I'll just add to it. It's not enough to tax their wealth. It's important to take their property rights over the means of production. And let me give you a very simple example, right? We're talking about AI, technological innovation. Now, imagine you have a company of 100 workers. They produce widgets. I don't care what it is. Huh? And let's say that a new piece of AI, an AI bot or an Android, whatever, can double the productivity of these 100 workers. They can produce exactly the same stuff with half the labor. Now, compare and contrast two systems of property rights. One is, this is owned by some bastard who lives in Dubai. What do you think is going to happen? Immediately, he's going to fire half of the workers using the AI in order to maintain production. He's halved his, and say he, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay? I won't say he or she. Not that there are no bastard women capitalists. We are feminists who can't, it's he in Dubai. All right? Now, suppose that company belonged, it was a cooperative. One person, one worker, one share, one vote. And they had a meeting. And they said, shall we employ this AI? And they said, yeah, of course. Let's employ this AI and half the amount of working hours. And use the rest of the day in order to look after our elderly parents, our children, learn a new language, play music, or just bum around. This is why ownership, common ownership, is essential. And it is the only way that we can benefit from technology, rather than become slaves to the technology.
Yeah, very, very good. I did in the start here. I did a bit of a joke about economists. Here comes another one. I'm sorry. It goes like this: if you took all the economists in the world and lined them up along the equator, shoulder to shoulder, that would be a very good idea. No,
I didn't understand it.
It's just typical economists to feel like if you do this and this and put them along the equator, you will see this and this amount of people or whatever. But here it's just like, it's a way to store them.
To store them? Okay, so they won't do any damage.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
I understand.
Yeah. In boats or along the shoreline.
And some would also drown because it's...
No, but there's boats.
Okay.
And there's no death in this joke.
We will discuss this joke in more depth afterwards.
But I think that this joke doesn't really do justice to the three of you and other great economists. But if you use it instead of financial traders, Gary, if you think that you take all the traders and you just put them in boats along the equators and then they can be there for a while, will we notice? Will it be a problem for the rest of us? Or
So technically, I'm on a book tour here, so I haven't really promoted I wrote a book about my time as a trader.
Yeah,
it's very
exactly.
good.
Great
it's very
book.
well in
really
the UK.
Recommended the trading game, so that's why I'm asking him about.
We haven't got a Norwegian translation yet, so call your publishers. You read the book; it's very clear. Like, I worked with like quite a lot of dickheads, but they're not all dickheads. But to be honest, I don't love this like point at the traders, they're the bad guys thing. And when I wrote my book, I had a rule when I wrote my book. I didn't want anyone to be completely good, and I didn't want anyone to be completely bad, because I don't really like this like heroes and villains way of painting the economy. Because if you like encourage this belief that what we have in this world is like heroes and villains, and the villains are the bad guys, and the heroes are the good guys, then it creates this idea that like the way we make things better is the heroes do it. These amazing guys do it. And the truth is that, listen, I was a trader. I'm not a perfect guy. You know, I don't think I have a super healthy relationship with money. I've done bad things in my life. Probably everyone in here has done things which they think they're not proud of. They wouldn't like people to know. It is people like us who are imperfect, who make mistakes, who do bad things, who have to fix this. It's not going to be, you know, because sometimes I see now, like, I have this YouTube channel and I'm a celeb or whatever, and Yanis probably gets this as well. People become like, oh, that's it, Gary's going to save us. I'm not going to save us. You know, it's not, and Yanis, you know, us four on the stage are not going to save us. The only power I have is that people support me. I need ordinary people to do this. And I don't think we fix this by lining people up. Those are the bad guys, those are the bad guys, you know. Communists lining people up has not done good things in the past, right? Listen.
But I was also not really thinking about in terms of good or bad guys, but the profession, some professions don't seem very like...
Look,
yeah.
I've said it before, listen, half of the families in my country cannot simultaneously feed their kids and turn the heating on in winter. This gets worse. This gets worse. This is serious. We are on the Titanic. The iceberg is there. We are going down quickly. Now, we can decide who the bad guys are after we have turned the ship. Listen, I'm from a working class background, right? It's people like me, my friends, my family, who are really, really struggling. Really, really struggling. People like the people I grew up with. My priority, number one, is stopping this economic crisis from worsening. And I don't think we do that by deciding who the bad guys are. We get together, we understand the problem, and we fix it. And then we can decide who the bad guys are afterwards. I'm not interested in that.
You had a... Yeah,
I agree again with Gary. This is my job tonight, to be in agreement with Gary. It's not bad people. It's a bad system. Okay? A bad system turns good people, mediocre people, banal people into bastards. That's what the bad system does. And, you know, you can prove this, prove it, and to the extent that you can prove anything in a social world. Just look at the 50s and 60s. In the 50s and 60s, we had a very weird global capitalist system under the Bretton Woods system. It was the result of the Second World War. We had essentially a planned capitalist economy with immense controls over what the bankers did. So think about it. You know, when I was born, the exchange rate between the Greek drachma and the US dollar was 30 drachmas to $1. It was the same until I was 16 years of age. The same, every day. It was beautifully boring. Interest rates were 4% every day, for months, 4%. Bankers couldn't do shit. They could lend money, they could take your money and lend it to him, right? Which is, bread and butter, just basic banking. Banking was extremely boring, which is fantastic, right? During that time, the trading game was okay. There were no masters of the universe in that game. There were no people who were creating weapons of mass financial destruction because the system was so contained. That system was blown up on the 15th of August 1971 by Richard Nixon, the Donald Trump of that period. But he had a reason for doing it. That system could no longer function because it was based on America having a trade surplus. That didn't last after 1969-70, so they blew it up. And then they had to recycle everybody else's money into the United States through Wall Street. So they unleashed the Wall Street bankers. Go crazy, go mad, do whatever you want, go berserk, as long as you do this recycling of other people's money. And then you have the trading game, right? And people get corrupted. I had the same experience as Gary. I never worked in that world, but like I'm here, sometimes this is very weird. I get invited to speak in events, far more boring than this, by JP Morgan, by Bank of America. My assumption is that they are masochists. So they like me, beat them over the head. Or they get bored and they want somebody like me to spice up their lives, whatever. But after the talk, a lot of them come to me and they confess that they are leftists who've sold their soul to the devil, but what can I do? I have school fees to pay, and my mother is sick, and so on. So it is a bad system that is corrupting banal people.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for answering. This was actually what I was looking for. And I also, that's why I mentioned that you're not very morally upset with Gary for betting against it, because it's the system more than this.
It would be very un-Marxist of him to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I thought we can round up, but we have some time, so we can round up slowly on a positive and a negative note. Because as we have talked about tonight, the left have the best policies to make the world function for the vast majority and not just a small elite. And to some extent, like you have also been talking about, Marie, we feel that the message is getting out more than for a while. There is gathering momentum. And right now, in several polls in a row, Rødt has come out as Norway's 4th largest party. And this is bigger than the liberals, bigger than the Christians, bigger than the Greens, bigger than all the others. And this is actually really new for us in Norway and for us in this movement. The radical left has become such a powerful force. So there are 3 parties ahead, and that is, of course, the traditional left, the center-left, of course, the traditional center-right, and, of course, the far-right, which is by far the 2nd largest party in Norway, way ahead of the center-right. So my question again is twofold. It is, how can Rødt build on this momentum? Do you have any advice for us to take this even further? This is advice to Marie, our leader, but to all of us in the room. And second, it's really cool to be number 4 out of 9. It's really new. It's a lot of people in other parties that are upset now, but it still it's not so nice that the far right is doing so well here and everywhere else in the US, in Europe, in India, in the world. And why do you think we are in the middle of such a right-wing wave? Why is it like the right time right now? And how can we, so to speak, break that right-wing wave? And I don't know, I thought maybe we could start with you, Yanis, because like you also mentioned, you have had some experience of being a small left-wing party that grew fast. And now that's us. What can we learn from you guys? And then there's a second question also, of course.
Our job is that of a good surfer. You know surfing?
Yes.
The surfer cannot generate the wave. But a good surfer knows how to exploit a good wave when it comes and doesn't miss it. So history produces the wave. You know, capitalism, techno-feudalism, whatever you might call it, generates these crises. And we have to be ready to jump on that crisis to lift our people from the mire in which they have been submerged. This is our job. We must not get anxious about creating the wave, but we must be working day in, day out to prepare the ground organizationally in the neighborhoods, in workplaces, with solidarity movements like Palestine. You have to fight tooth and nail against this twin totalitarianism. You have the totalitarianism of the radical center, which is producing the austerity that creates the discontent that fits the totalitarians of the right, which they, if they had any brains, they would have loved the radical center, because it's the radical center that produces the discontent, which the totalitarian rightists and the xenophobes use in order to remain politically alive. And the radical center loves the totalitarians of the right because it is the only reason why people vote for them, to keep the totalitarian right out. So you have, in the same way that Putin and NATO need each other. They are symbiotic. They work together because they want war. Both NATO and Putin want war. Putin has become incredibly powerful as a result of NATO, and NATO has expanded as a result of Putin. We must not only wait for the waves that history is going to create, but we must be the wedge that goes in between these two totalitarianisms and brings rational hope through what I call constructive disobedience.
thank you. And you? Do you have some...
Well, I mean, I think the right is popular because it's like really, really obvious that the economic status quo has failed. And like people will vote for like a boring centrist once, twice, 3, 4 times, and then they'll vote for someone crazy. And they're kind of right to do that because if it's obvious that what you're being offered is going to fail, you know, ordinary people, not political experts, once they know that's going to fail and they're correct. So they want something new. And, you know, there's a quote, Milton Friedman, at times of crisis, the solution will be chosen from the ideas lying around at the time. It is so obvious that the far right is the loudest idea lying around at the time. And the second loudest idea is basically us, tax the rich. So obviously the rich are funding the problem is foreigners. So they are being funded and they are new and they are not the center. That's why they're popular, to be honest. Which is why I think there's massive space. There's massive space for something like this. There's massive space for something on the left. It's why I'm really happy to see this here. With regards to what you can do, you know, this is my first day in Norway. I arrived today, so I'm not an expert on the situation here. I will speak from what happened in the UK. We had a thriving, you know, culturally powerful new left movement not long ago in my country, and it failed for a variety of reasons. I was told on the way here that this party is popular with the working class, and I think that is the key. That is the key. That is so important because in my country, what happened was a lot of this leftist movement was coming from more middle-class people. It was coming from more middle-class people, and that allowed a wedge to be driven. My country is a country which has issues with class and has for a long time. It was possible to drive a wedge between the left and the working class. You cannot allow that to happen. And the way that you prevent that from happening is you make sure all the time that what you are doing is in the interests, the direct economic interests of the working class. And you hold that all the time because the big power that you have, the big power that the left will always have, is that far right, they will impoverish the people whose votes they need. That is your power. You need to make sure that you are making their lives better economically every day.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. What do you feel, Maria?
I feel that was our closing speech. It's as both like Yanis and Gary's advice is very close to what I think we as a movement think and try to and strive for. Both the hope element, I think that's a very important word that Yanis used because, as I said earlier in my speech in Norwegian, it feels like when you wake up in the morning and you open your phone, as we do, and check the news, it's like you want to just stay in bed because things are not good in all different aspects of life. And I think our biggest enemy is that feeling of nothing will ever work, it's hopeless. And for our movement, we need to create some hope, make it believable that we can change, and that's honestly why we do this, is because I hope that I know a lot of you are not from Oslo, you came here by train or bus or whatever. In your local community, you maybe have 10 or 15 friends who are like leftist and interested in this thing. Here together, you are several hundred, and afterwards there will be music, you can dance, you can have a beer, you can talk. To feel that community and to feel that strength together is extremely important because that creates the hope. And it is true that Rødt is now one of the new things in Norway is that there is a leftist, a socialist, revolutionary socialist party that is actually quite popular with working people, and that is extremely important. But also in Norway, geography is very important. So class is very important, obviously the most important, but also geography. There's a big difference between Oslo, big metropolitan city. Okay, it's a big city for Norwegian standards, and rural areas of Norway. So that's like if we can both mobilize class-wise, but also like in rural areas, I think we can use the next few months to create this hope that something can change. And then obviously it's a very, very big task of us to then use that power or that position after the election. But I think step one is to make that happen. So thank you so much for helping us doing that.
Yes, thank you so much.
Finished.
Yeah.
Thank you.